Hello and welcome to People and Power. I'm Hamish McDonald. On today's programme, the HIV trail.
Yok, özümüz doğru satып alamiz.
Misal üçün menin kızım bayaqınday ampicillin mындайга hiç tasir etpedi. Baştalganda эле bayaqınday efipim деген. Men günümlük, şu bir günlük günden çıkıp kayta batkаны, ошол kızımın ömürü ошol. Ошол bakıt manga. Geleceğini hiç oylay albayм men. Tınımsız oruйт kızım.
When NATO and its allies went to war in Afghanistan, the alliance promised to curtail the export of drugs from there to Europe. Since then, the West has spent hundreds of millions of dollars setting up local agencies to fight drug trafficking, not just in Afghanistan, but also along the main opium and heroin route through the former Soviet republics of Central Asia. In the wake of the drugs from Afghanistan, the region is now facing another danger, a potential epidemic of HIV infections. For years, HIV primarily spread amongst the hundreds of thousands of needle-sharing addicts. But as Michael Anderson reports, HIV is now bridging, as the experts say, to the general population.
Madina is 4 years old. Her mother took her to the doctor a year ago because she was running a fever. Like many hospitals in Central Asia, they were sorely strapped for supplies. And even though Madina's mother paid for a fresh needle, the doctor reused a syringe and infected her with the HIV virus.
Oh. That's lovely, huh? You like that one? Yeah, it's all right.
There has been a string of such cases throughout Central Asia. Just in this small town in southern Kyrgyzstan, 170 kids contracted the virus in this way. I spoke to two of the mothers.
Bizde bunday оору жок деп ойлойт элем мен. Биздин Кыргызстанда эми бирок ошондо жакында изилдеп бир врачтан сурасам, катетер эч качан 2 жолу коюлбайт, бул одноразовый дейт. Эгерде ошондой болгон болсо, бул баягы шприцтен ар бир балага бир палатада канча бала жатса, ошол катетерлерге бир эле шприцтен укол сайылып атканда.
Şu kasaldı tushunmadi. Bir ash qaynamni uyda yashab turganimizda ham biz qizim ikkovimiz yegan nimani idish tovoqlarni qaynam musorga tashlab yuboradi.
Bizde musulman da bizdeçi. Bunday oorunu эми bizde düşünüp elge malumat толук жетпеген, айыл жеринде эми.
But the court didn't think that. It held the hospital responsible, convicting 14 doctors and nurses of negligence. The fate of these children is a result of poverty and lack of information. But another factor is geography. These children live right on a modern-day Silk Road, the route that the heroin and opium now travel from producers in Afghanistan to buyers in Europe.
Well, it's a fact that HIV spread in the wake of drugs in Central Asia. So the places where drugs are smuggled, that's where you find the HIVs. The drugs go all the way from Afghanistan through Tajikistan, through the rest of Central Asia, which is a hub for the drug smuggling, further on to Russia and to Europe, yeah.
Until 20 years ago, Central Asia was part of the Soviet Union. And even after independence, the regimes here continue to ignore, even suppress information about HIV. Officially, only 2 persons per 1,000 are infected with the virus.
Experts say that you can easily multiply that number with up to 10, and then you get the actual number of HIV infected, meaning actually more than 2% of the population could be HIV infected.
Normally internationally you consider anything more than 1%, that's called an epidemic, right?
Yeah, you could say that here we are in the beginning of an epidemic of HIV. Yeah.
2 or 3% infected within a region of 50 million, that is potentially 1 million people with HIV.
The last 10 years, maybe 15 years since HIV broke out in the region, it was limited to risk groups. It's limited to injecting drug users, to commercial sex workers, to men having sex with men. But what you see these years is that it's bridging to the general population. It's bridging through women having sexual relations with injecting drug users. It's labor migrants coming back from Russia where the HIV prevalence is higher. And you also have these cases of children getting infected in hospitals. Combined with a quite low level of awareness of HIV and how to protect yourself, this is like a bomb.
In order to stop the drugs coming from Afghanistan through Central Asia to Europe, the West has spent tens of millions of dollars setting up local drug control agencies. The one in Tajikistan invited us to film their latest success. Stopping the drugs at source was one of NATO's justifications for the war in Afghanistan, but so far with very limited success. According to the United Nations, 6 million doses of heroin enter Tajikistan every day.
The government agencies here in Central Asia fighting the drug traffickers are, to put it mildly, not very efficient. According to the United Nations, they seize only 2% of the drugs traveling through the region.
But inefficiency might not be their worst fault. I asked the deputy director of the Tajik Drugs Control Agency whether the persistent rumors of corruption were true.
Правительство и государство тоже здесь сами занимаются с такими вещами.
Я такими информациями не располагаю, чтобы правительство именно занималось сам, такого не может быть.
Вы поймаете, как сказать, приблизительно половину или на треть или 2% или как?
Ну, примерно половину.
Примерно половину.
Да.
Так считаете, да?
Я так считаю, да.
Это официальные данные.
Ну, дело в том, что значит, может процентов 20-25 примерно.
But the spokesman for the Tajik border police was more open about the problems of guarding a 1,300-kilometer border with Afghanistan.
Ну, у нас несколько застав стоят, на каждые десятки километров стоит застава, пограничная застава. И пограничники патрулируют по этой территории.
В принципе, довольно легко проехать, да?
Конечно, это же пешком же, пограничники пешком они патрулируют. И наши пограничники иногда за сутки проходят до 20-30 километров, патрулируют. Молодые ребята. По средним, по мировым данным, где-то около 10-12% всех наркотиков задерживается. Таджикистан использует просто как транзитная страна. И через территорию Таджикистана переходит, скажем, в другие страны, уже жизнь кого-то, скажем, в России или в Западной Европе или в Америке.
The UN agency responsible believes that another problem is also significant. The police have themselves become closely entangled in criminal networks engaged in contraband and drugs trafficking. As we traveled further along the drugs route, this view was supported. The police would not speak to us, but despite the risk they took by speaking out, drug users we spoke to were open and unanimous about police involvement in the drugs trade. In Hujand in northern Tajikistan, we visited a drop-in center for recovering addicts.
Уже сколько лет я употреблял. В тюрьме, вот с тюрьмы вышел, и до сих пор я не употребляю.
Это сколько времени уже?
3,5 года.
Это хорошо. Это значит, уже база есть для устроить нормальную жизнь, так сказать, да?
Хочу, да, попробовать начать сначала.
Ну, не знаю, просто я с одним парнем встречался, вот он меня на наркотики посадил. Он продавал.
Он продавал, да? И вы попробовали?
Попробовала, и потом понравилось, 10 лет я кололась. Потом в тюрьму попала. Вот сейчас в тюрьму вышла.
И сколько посидели?
2 года.
В смысле купить легко?
Ну, это все-таки нелегально, да? Значит, да, что надо вот посмотреть, что милиция, полиция не...
Да,
это все нелегально. Если он чужой, вы здесь попадете с этими наркотиками. 6 секунд. Вас подставят просто из этого, для того, чтобы навариться бабками. Все. Заплатите, отпустят. Без этого никак не будет здесь наркотиков.
Ладно, вот говорят, что вот в колониях нету наркотиков.
Что?
Вот у нас официально в колониях нету наркотиков. Вот. Но почти во всех колониях наркотики есть. А как они туда поступают, если охраняют, как говорится, люди в погонах? Значит, они сами это приносят. Это простой пример того, что милиция связана с наркотиками. Вот где я находился в колонии, там 80% употребляли.
80%?
Да, ну никак.
The UN estimates that there are almost 500,000 drug addicts in Central Asia, the huge majority injecting heroin. Experts warn that it is a particular worry that addicts here often share needles.
Выбора нету иногда.
Как выбора нету?
Ну так, в зоне, допустим, нету, ну, колония, да, зона, лагерь.
Просто одно шприц и народ.
Заключенного нету выбора. Один шприц, им пользуется, может быть, 50-100 человек.
These are some of the poorest countries in the world, and with no social security system in place, ex-convicts and recovering addicts are left on their own.
У вас есть семья? Что-то? Нет.
У меня вообще сейчас никого не осталось из-за моего статуса. Я лишь положительный.
In Osh in southern Kyrgyzstan, we had agreed an interview at the Drug Control Agency. But when we arrived, the agency had been closed down by the Kyrgyz president. No official reason was given. As a result, Kyrgyzstan, a key point on the drugs and HIV trail, is now left without a special agency for combating the drugs trade. At a rehabilitation center, the director is leading a self-help session. Again, we hear tales of abuse by people in authority preying on the vulnerable. Too nervous to speak out in public, some prefer not to have their faces shown.
Мент предлагает тебе отраву, чтобы ты деньги ему дать, ему на бензин надо. Вот в данный момент. А это ладно, не бойся, бери. Всю жизнь же у нее я беру. Ну, я вот даже и страх этот у меня, даже я и не боюсь. А мент говорит, вот у меня есть пакет, возьми вот это, купи у меня. Нищий наркоман, который ничего нету, ни дома, ни денег с него не взять, потом они ему дадут и поймают, и в тюрьму посадят. Мы испытали, да, не люди. И мы испытали, да.
Soon after we filmed there, the building housing the rehab center was confiscated by the state. Often, drug addiction drives women into prostitution. In Osh, a town with 500,000 people and maybe as many as 10,000 drug addicts, there are now more than 1,000 commercial sex workers. The organization Podruga runs information sessions for them about the importance of using condoms.
Этот банановый, лимонный, это вот клубничный, столько нака. Оральный секс.
Prostitution is a key factor in the spread of HIV. Nevertheless, many men here will pay double the fee for sex without a condom.
Без этого никак же.
Никогда.
Нет.
These women have been working on the streets for more than 5 years. They have small children and no husbands. For 1 hour of sex, they charge $7 to $10.
Это менты придет, они деньги заберет и уйдет. Ничего никому не скажет.
Долю берут свою.
И все.
It's now midnight and snowy and cold here in Osh, and we're on our way to meet some of the outreach workers from Podruga to see how they actually work on the street with the young prostitute girls.
Проводить, если получится, мини-сессию и раздавать презервативы и информационные материалы. Это девушкам раздайте, пожалуйста, ладно? Своим подружкам.
И сколько стоит?
400.
400? Да. Сколько получается, скажем, месяц или
Ну,
неделю?
месяц, да, где-то 9 тысяч, 10 иногда бывает.
A lot of money in that part of the world and enough to attract the attention of the local police.
For not to get them in trouble, put the camera inside. Huh? The girl's getting in big trouble. The police is staying there.
Although we had put the camera down, the microphone picked up what happened next. As I talked to one of the girls, she was grabbed by the police and only let off when her madam, Opa in Kyrgyz, paid the police a bribe. All this with me standing no more than a couple of meters away.
Опа!
И что делает?
Каждый день приедет, деньги заберет, блядь.
Деньги заберет? У вас?
Да. Будет девчонка поймать, каждая девчонка нас за штуку заберет.
According to experts, the lack of information is one of the biggest problems when trying to combat AIDS in Central Asia.
One thing that's still a taboo here is the use of condoms. And if you start talking about condoms, it implies that you are not faithful to your partner. You have other
the
partners.
fact that men here openly and quite often visit brothels, right?
Yes, I mean it is a paradox, you could say. We made a survey among the population in the southern regions where HIV is most widespread, showing that 30% of the respondents said that they didn't believe that condoms prevented HIV spread.
They didn't believe that.
They didn't believe that condoms were effective against the spread of HIV.
So no need for using
Exactly.
condoms.
Such ignorance is a ticking bomb. Not least as poverty is now forcing millions of young men from Central Asia to go and work in Russia, often bringing back more than just money.
We have numbers on HIV prevalence among commercial sex workers, street prostitutes in St. Petersburg in Russia, that 92% of the street prostitutes are injecting drug users and 50% of them are HIV positive. These are the cheapest prostitutes on the street, and those are the ones that the Tajik, Kyrgyz, whatever labor migrants would go to. This is what is happening. Central Asian labor migrants go to prostitutes in Russia without using condoms, getting infected, coming back to their family, wife, etc. in Central Asia, and of course transfer the HIV to them.
This situation has now convinced a group of 30 imams in Tajikistan to bring information about HIV into the mosque.
And imams provide this information and tell something about the AIDS or drug using or using of condom. Not all the people, of course, like this, and some of them, they say why we should hear this information in mosque. Mosque is not the place for this information.
It was Manisha Haitova who came up with this unique project, which is supported by Christian aid organizations.
The imams and the Islam, this is the only way and only, I would say that's only way and instrument for influence, deep influence to the people. In the Muslim society, using condoms can be only between the wife and husband. After our training, our participants, imams, they provide information that if you had some behavior, risky behavior in abroad the country, you should using condoms with your wife.
Before the Friday prayer, a leading imam told me about his participation in the project. The imams are now mentioning condoms in their services, but most are still more keen on stressing abstinence and monogamy.
استفاده کردن یا که این زنا کردن که عاقبت به سپید میرساند، ما باید مردم را تعلیم دهیم که خداوند بزرگ این را اجازت نداده است. و
Why does the imams not tell their people to use the condoms? This is the only way you can be sure you don't get AIDS.
نه او یگان چیزی ممانعت نیست، اما در شریعت ما زینا چیزی ممنوع است. اگر مرد با همراه زنش برای پیشگیری، تاجیک‌ها یک مثل خوب دارن که اگر بخوای که سگ نگیرد با او نزدیک نشو.
The health system here has broken down and hospitals are forced to charge patients for medical supplies. But they often reuse syringes and catheters, making a little extra money, but imposing an enormous risk on their patients. In 2008, 170 children in Kyrgyzstan were infected in this way. 14 doctors were fired, but nobody went to prison.
Bizda hozir so'z пособие olamiz. U bolaga yetmaydi ham. Vrachlarda hech nima yo'q, sud bo'lyapti, qayta sud bo'lyapti, hech natijasi yo'q.
On top of caring for a daughter with HIV, Dinara has 5 other children and her husband is blind. Both the women now work in the organization Mama Plus, fighting for the rights of their children.
Yo'q, o'zimiz dori sotib olamiz.
Misol uchun mening qizim bayaqinday ampsilin undayga hech ta'sir etmedi. Boshtalganda ele bayaqinday efipim degan.
Local NGOs are running a part-time kindergarten for the HIV positive kids, also to give the mothers a break.
Usually they come with their kids, and that's why we had an idea to open some kind of a day kindergarten, and at last we did it. This kindergarten will work once a month, so in the next room women will have meetings of self-help group.
Oh, yes.
So, the essence of the exercise is that one person is in the middle and then everybody should say one compliment to that person.
Men уже günümlük, şu bir günlük günden çıkıp qayta batqаны, şol kızımın ömürü şol vaqt manga. Keleceğini hiç oylay albayım men. Tınımsız orit kızım.
Well, that's it for this edition of People and Power. If you'd like to comment on our report or any other matter, we'd love to hear from you on aljazeera.net/English. Until next time, goodbye.